Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Schupbach, and today I'll be discussing my project on marital relationship satisfaction and adolescent emotional insecurity in association with dynamics of parenting behavior. So first, I will be covering marital relationship satisfaction and its effects on parenting. Family systems theory states that families consist of multiple subsystems, with the interparental relationship serving as the cornerstone and potentially shaping relationships within other subsystems, such as the parent-child relationship. This led to the basis of the spillover hypothesis, in which past research has shown that negative interactions in the interparental system could spill over negatively into the parent-child subsystem. This could be manifested as lower parental sensitivity or lower parental involvement in child rearing. In the current study, marital relationship satisfaction, or lack thereof, was measured to examine its impact on parenting behavior, specifically parent engagement levels. Next, I'll be going over dynamics in parenting behavior. Research to date has traditionally examined parenting behaviors as a static, trait-level process involving typically self-reported global measures. However, using global measures does not consider parenting dynamics that occur when adapting to environmental changes. Considering the graphic here, both parent A, represented by the blue line, and parent B, represented by the orange line, possess the same overall average engagement levels, but the patterns of their trajectories may vary drastically. Examining these shorter-term dynamics in parenting behavior may be particularly important given the dynamic system perspective, in which stable development emerges as a result of real-time social interactions at the micro time scale. As parents are one of the most important socialization forces for children, the current study aimed to gain a closer look into the micro-level parent-child interactions that happen to families in real life by assessing the minute-by-minute trajectories of parent engagement levels. The current study also sought to look at the moderating effects of adolescent emotional insecurity on the spillover between marital relationship satisfaction and parent engagement levels. Highlighted by the ecological model of parenting, parenting behaviors may be shaped by multiple interacting factors. This includes both the interparental relationship and child characteristics such as emotional insecurity. An adolescent's emotional security is gradually accumulated through small-level interactions with their family and becomes more ingrained and stabilized over time. Therefore, their emotional insecurity could operate as an individual difference factor, which previous research has demonstrated to occur. Emotional security theory refers to emotional security as a child's sense for security for the interparental relationship, which might be diminished if children are exposed to interparental relationship discord. Children who are emotionally insecure are prone to either intense, prolonged emotional arousal, directly involve themselves in arguments, or become unable to regulate their behavior. There are several ways in which emotional insecurity could play a role within the spillover process. Adolescents who exhibit greater emotional and behavioral reactivity to negative interparental signals may potentially amplify the spillover process. Alternatively, if an adolescent directly involves themselves in arguments by comforting a parent, this could act as a compensating factor for spillover effects. The present study sought to examine how adolescent emotional insecurity may amplify or diminish the spillover from marital relationship satisfaction to parental engagement levels. To review, this multi-method, multi-informant study sought to examine two things. First, the link between marital relationship satisfaction and maternal and paternal engagement observed on the minute-to-minute basis during a family conflict discussion. And second, how adolescent emotional insecurity might moderate the association between marital relationship satisfaction and parent engagement dynamics. Moving on to the methods of the current study, our participants included 192 families consisting of a mother, father, and adolescent whose mean age was 12.4 years old, including 96 boys and 96 girls. Fathers were 44.2 years old on average, and their median education level was an associate's degree. Mothers were 41.5 years old on average, and their median educational level was a bachelor's degree. The length of time that the couple had been living together was on average 15.5 years. These families completed the family conflict discussion task, in which adolescents and their parents were instructed to discuss a problematic issue for 7 minutes and to get their points across. The most common topics discussed included chores, electronics usage, and sibling relationships. The task occurred in a room set up to appear as a typical living room, and the interactions were video recorded. Measures for the current study included parent relationship satisfaction, adolescent emotional insecurity, and parent engagement levels. Parent relationship satisfaction was measured using the Couple Satisfaction Index, which is designed to measure an individual's satisfaction in a relationship. This was collected through parental self-report, and a mean score was created in which a higher score reflected greater satisfaction among the couple. Adolescent emotional insecurity was measured by parent report using the Security in the Marital Subsystem Parent Report Inventory, which assessed parent perception of adolescent emotional insecurity during the past year, evaluated on a 5-point Likert scale, from 1 meaning not at all like him or her to 5 meaning a whole lot like him or her. Subscales of emotional reactivity, direct involvement, and behavioral dysregulation were assessed, standardized, and then aggregated together to form the emotional insecurity score, with mother and father reports averaged together to get an overall assessment of adolescent emotional insecurity. A higher score here reflected adolescents' greater emotional insecurity about the interparental relationship. I took the lead in conducting observations of parent engagement levels during the family conflict discussion task on a minute-by-minute basis, separately for mothers and fathers. Taught to undergraduate coding teams, parent engagement was assessed using a 4-point Likert scale, with 1 meaning not at all characteristic and 4 meaning mainly characteristic. And this captured the degree to which a parent displays a lack of behaviors indicative of disengagement. A lower score for engagement could indicate signs that the parent was not paying attention or was letting their partner or child take control of the discussion. A higher score reflected a parent who's mainly engaged in the discussion, and these ratings were based on both the quality and quantity of verbal and nonverbal behaviors. Of note here, only the first 6 minutes of the task was coded for parent engagement levels because it was found that many families did not discuss for the full 7 minutes, and standardizing to 6 minutes allowed for engagement in the discussion only to be measured. Data analysis occurred in 2 steps. First, examining the latent growth curve trajectories for parenting behavior, and second, predicting the parenting behavior trajectories via the key study variables. When examining for the best fit for latent growth curve models, time was centered around the first minute, and 1 minute was treated as the unit of time. A series of nested latent growth curve models were fitted, beginning with the intercept-only model, then the linear time effect model, and then the quadratic time effect model. The best model fit was chosen based on model fit indices, significance of the parameters and variance terms, the chi-squared likelihood ratio test, and the delta CFI. The quadratic time effect model was the best fit for both maternal and paternal engagement. Next are key predictors such as parental relationship satisfaction and adolescent emotional insecurity were standardized to create an interaction term of marital relationship satisfaction and adolescent emotional insecurity. These variables were then specified as predictors for the latent intercept, linear slope, and quadratic slope in separate models for both parents. When a significant interaction emerged, the interaction was plotted at -1 and +1 standard deviation of the moderator to examine simple slopes. These graphs are showing the predicted engagement trajectories for mothers and fathers using the quadratic time effect model. The x-axis represents the minute of the family conflict discussion task, and the y-axis represents the level of engagement on the 4-point Likert scale. Both mothers and fathers began the task with fairly high levels of engagement, exhibited a linear decrease, and such decrease was slowed down quadratically near the end of the task. Mothers show higher levels of engagement overall than compared to fathers, indicating that they may play a more active role in conflict discussions, which appears consistent to previous findings that mothers usually exhibit greater engagement compared to fathers. After all, mothers are usually primary caregivers of adolescents and thus may have more knowledge about arrangements within the family, such as who completes the chores. Therefore, mothers may appear to be more involved than fathers in solving the conflict with the adolescent. Father engagement levels seem to vary more broadly and follow a flexible engagement style, which could represent the father being less engaged and withdrawn from the discussion, but could also reflect them granting more autonomy and allowing other opportunities for family members to express their opinions and lead the discussion. Significant main effects were found for relationship satisfaction, impacting the intercept, linear slope, and quadratic slope for mother engagement levels. The graphic here is showing the simple slope of these effects. Again, the x-axis represents the minute of the task, and the y-axis represents the mother's engagement level. The solid line indicates high relationship satisfaction, whereas the dotted line indicates low relationship satisfaction. For families with greater marital relationship satisfaction between parents, mothers showed greater initial levels of engagement, a faster linear decrease at the beginning of the discussion, and a greater increase in recovery of their engagement level towards the end of the discussion, indicating more flexibility in engagement levels when discussing a conflict. This finding is consistent with the spillover hypothesis in that mothers who have a more supportive marital relationship may have more psychological resources and energy to be engaged and attentive towards their adolescent when solving a difficult issue. Additionally, the flexible pattern of engagement levels align with results from previous studies in which the heightened flexibility could be a result of greater emotional availability to adjust involvement levels according to the child's emotional dynamics and the demands of a difficult discussion. A similar main effect was observed for adolescent emotional insecurity, in that higher levels of adolescent emotional insecurity related to higher initial levels of maternal engagement. This proves consistent with evidence showing evocative effects of child emotional insecurity on parenting. Emotionally insecure adolescents are more likely to show negative emotions, dysregulated behavior, or directly involve themselves in interparental discord, and therefore more easily draw parents' attention in the discussion at the beginning of the task. Turning to fathers, no main effects were observed, but a significant interaction effect emerged in predicting the intercept of fathers' engagement. In this graphic, the x-axis represents the degree of marital relationship satisfaction, and the y-axis represents the father's initial level of engagement in the task. Adolescent emotional insecurity operated as a moderator for marital relationship satisfaction for paternal initial engagement. That is, greater marital relationship satisfaction was significantly linked to greater initial paternal engagement only when the adolescent had a high level of emotional insecurity, as you can see in the solid black line. However, when observing the dotted line, you will see that this association does not occur when the adolescent had low emotional insecurity. These findings proved consistent with prior evidence showing that the presence of a risk factor, in this case, adolescent emotional insecurity, may exaggerate the spillover process of interparental relationship to parenting. Greater adolescent emotional insecurity may operate as an additional layer of risk factors that further deplete a parent's psychological resources to contain discord and negativity within the marital relationship. To review, several strengths were present in the current study. The study adopted a minute-by-minute observation for both maternal and paternal engagement levels over the course of the interaction, and provided evidence for the role of marital relationship and adolescent characteristics on parenting dynamics. These findings contributed to a more detailed understanding of the course of parent-adolescent interaction. Mothers were found to have main effects occurring in which greater marital relationship satisfaction was associated with greater initial maternal engagement, quicker decrease of engagement in the middle of the task, and greater recovery near the end of the task. Greater adolescent emotional insecurity was also associated with greater initial maternal engagement. These findings are potentially explained in that mothers who have a more supportive marital relationship may have more psychological resources and energy to be engaged and flexible in their engagement levels, depending on the child's emotional needs during the difficult discussion. Fathers were found to have an interaction effect occurring in which greater marital relationship satisfaction was associated with greater initial paternal engagement, only when adolescents had a high level of emotional insecurity. These findings are consistent with past research indicating that the presence of a risk factor, such as parent depressive symptoms, co-parenting conflict, or in this case, adolescent emotional insecurity, the spillover process may be exaggerated. Risk and potentiating models of developmental psychopathology propose that the presence of risk factors further depletes a parent's psychological resources to contain their interparental conflicts within the marital relationship, manifested by a stronger spillover from the interparental relationship to parenting practices. To conclude, I'd like to acknowledge all of those who have helped me in the process of this project. Thank you to Rochester Center for Research on Children and Families at Mount Hope Family Center, to my advisor, Dr. Melissa Sturge-Apple, Dr. G. Lee, Dr. Patrick Davies, and I'd also like to thank the University of Rochester Psychology Department and to all my family and friends for supporting me through this project.